This podcast is made on the lands of the Pambalong clan of the Awabakal people, and we acknowledge elders past and present. In 1965, the University of Newcastle opened its doors with a vision of making tertiary education accessible to those in its region. Fast forward to today, and the university now has more than 200,000 alumni who have made a difference all over the world. Welcome to Leading Conversations, a series bringing you stories from our alumni, the people who've shaped and been shaped by the University of Newcastle. In our 6th episode, Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky sits down with proud University of Newcastle alum and founder of ByStorm Beauty, Storm Menzies. Storm's company has been a leading innovator in the disability sector, making beauty products truly accessible for those who have been excluded for far too long.
Welcome, Storm.
Thank you so much for having me.
A little bit about Storm. She graduated in nutrition and dietetics and most recently founded her own beauty products company for people with disabilities. So tell us a bit about ByStorm Beauty.
Honestly, I was never really thinking about starting my own company. This wasn't necessarily a plan that I had. It really started out of happenstance. So I have mild cerebral palsy. 2.5 years ago now, I broke my dominant hand. And honestly, I didn't think much of it. I thought, okay, this is going to be a bit inconvenient. My dominant hand, I realized, is what I actually rely on to do everything. And I had this moment where I had my good hand, my dominant hand in a cast, and I went to go out and, went to put on my makeup, which is, the usual part of the routine. And I couldn't actually pick up a tube of mascara out of my makeup bag. I've really had very few challenges. And for the first time, I actually felt disability. Like I felt, oh my God, I can't do this. How am I going to do this? And I had this point of honestly just confusion, but I thought, okay, it's all right. What do you do when you don't know something? You Google it. Hop on Google, accessible makeup. Yeah, nothing's coming up. I'm like, okay, ergonomic makeup. Nothing's coming up. This doesn't make sense. I'm not Googling something right. So I called one of my girlfriends who has a more severe form of CP, and I said to her, hey, how do you do your makeup? And, we've been friends for almost 10 years at this time, and I'd never asked her about it ever. She always looks beautiful when we go out. I'd never even thought to ask. She goes to me, Storm, it is so difficult. Like makeup isn't designed for people like me. And why would it be? No one thinks that I could be beautiful. And it was this moment for me that I just go, oh my gosh, because when you've never seen yourself represented in beauty, then you don't have the products to actually make it easier for you. How do you feel like you belong in that space? How do you feel like you're beautiful? So from that point, I thought, okay, I got to do something about this. And this is kind of how ByStorm was born.
To get to uni, it's also a bit different. You're first in family. A long time ago, I was also first in family. But I know how important it is at Newcastle. Nearly 1 in 2 of our students are first in family. So what did it mean to you and your family about you to go to university in the first place?
I really, really tried at my HSC, and I thought if I do really well at my HSC, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that if I tried my best, I would have as many options as possible. And that's really what university was for me. I left home when I was 17, did my HSC when I was living by myself, and really very dedicated to study. I had a 12-hour study plan every single day and was very methodical with it because I really wanted to give myself the best opportunity at uni of getting into uni. At the time, my high school, we didn't even have a principal. I had only one permanent teacher out of all of my teachers during my HSC. So it was a bit of a rough time. Uni really provided that opportunity for me. And yeah, I'm really proud of it.
I know that from your background that you basically put yourself through uni. So that meant working a lot of jobs or part-time jobs, even working on a farm. So tell us about those sort of jobs and also the whole idea of working and studying. What are the challenges there? What did you learn?
I'm not going to lie, it's challenging trying to support yourself through university. I didn't have necessarily family support, particularly not financially. So I've been working my first job when I was 12. So I've had many jobs and supported myself through high school as well. So for me, it was probably a continuation of that. But you get into the big real world and there's a lot of financial pressures. So I worked lots of jobs for a long time, everything from support work during university to like I worked for a Wagyu beef farmer as well. And that was actually probably my first dipping the toe in a business. But yeah, I've had lots of different jobs, but it is really tough. And, you know, a lot of the time I think back to my university experience and I think, gosh, I wish I could have enjoyed it more, because a lot of my university was taken up by like trying to fit my uni classes in so I could go to work, so I could support myself, so I could pay for my existence. And it's something that, you know, I have a lot of friends who lived on campus, who had a lot of family support, and they had a really wonderful university experience where it was very immersive in the university. But I think when you don't come from that kind of background and you do have to support yourself through university, and I was supporting my little sister as well, it does make it quite challenging to actually have the really like beautiful university experience that I hope so many people do get to have.
A placement abroad in Nepal exposed Storm to a world completely different from her hospital placements in Australia. With limited resources and few tools, she had to think fast and adapt constantly. The experience opened her eyes to how fortunate we are in Australia, not just in healthcare, but in access to education and basic information.
Placements was the highlight of my university experience. I think that, you know, my final year was all placements, and I wish they were done more towards the beginning of the degree, because I think you really get to see what your profession is actually going to be about. And then you really get to see, you know, who are the users of your profession. And because I think a lot of the time you maybe have an idealized view of what your degree is. I think it would be really interesting to see how many people did their degree based on a TV show that they've watched, or, you know, an idea of something, because you don't really know a lot of the time. You think, oh, I'm interested in this, I'll do this. But what does that degree actually look like in practice? What do you do on, you know, a day-to-day as a professional? I think a lot of people don't really know that until they get to placement and they're like, oh wow, this is what it actually is. And I think regional and rural placement, I think, is so important for everyone. I think you get to see, you know, a lot of the time you're in your own little bubble, and going to university is a privilege, and you're around a lot of people who are very privileged, and that's really what you see. And then you go out into the big broad world, particularly regionally and rurally, and you see, wow, my experience is not everyone's experience. And I think it's a really wonderful time to really reflect on your own privileges and actually see how you can impact the world, particularly you know, from a health degree perspective as well. That's where I became honestly most passionate about my degree, because I saw the impact that it can really tangibly make when people don't have a lot and they don't have a lot of access to information, education, resources. You have to be really creative and really resourceful. And I think that's the really cool thing about doing things not in major cities, is that you are given so much more experience. And a lot of the time they're far less resourced as well. So you're in your placement where instead of almost being pigeonholed as you're the student, this is what you're doing, this is your task for the day, it's like, hey, we're short staffed. You're learning all of this because you're thrown in the deep end. We kind of have to. There's this one moment that really stands out to me with my placement, and I'll never forget it. We were in a hospital in Nepal that looks nothing like a hospital here. It looked more like a rundown kind of physio room from about like 50 years ago. It had very old school kind of like things in it, dirt floors. It was, you know, really interesting to be called a hospital. But, you know, that's what the community had. And there was someone there who needed the feed that goes through your nose into your stomach. And in Australia, everything's very sterile, very, very precise. You have, you know, special formulas that you mix up, that you put in, that have enough nutrients in it. And instead, I was helping someone do an NG feed that was a cup of soup mix that they'd put boiling hot water in, and then we're trying to funnel it down this little tube in through someone's nose with boiling hot water. And I will never forget it, because these cup of soup packets are like 100 calories. It's not nutritional, you know, the right concentration of nutrition whatsoever when someone needs that kind of feed, but it's all they had. It was a real big point for me to go, wow, like we're so lucky in Australia, but two, like they didn't know any better. And it really helped me understand how powerful information and education is as well. And like, we went in there, helped them understand, and it was like, oh, okay, we didn't know this. And that was a really wonderful experience for me to say, like, you can make so much impact just through something that you would look at as like, oh, this is just standard practice. They don't have that access to resources or information. And that, in a lot of those situations, can be life or death.
If I could take you a bit further along now, so you did all that, you graduated, and then at some point you started to think, maybe I want to move to being let's say, more in the support space or an advocate. What happened there? Tell us a little bit about that and how you pivoted into that role.
I started working in a hospital after I finished uni, and, I'd studied the whole way through. I'd never really had any break from high school to university, and everything had been very intense trying to support myself through uni. And I got into working in a hospital, and I really wanted to make an impact. And I think I've always wanted to help people, and I really wanted to make an impact. And I was in a hospital setting, and I just thought, this is not the impact that I wanted to make. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Thought, okay, I'm going to keep working, save some money and go traveling and, have that kind of like gap year. And I went overseas and traveled and came back and thought, I really don't want to do this anymore. It's really not really what I'm passionate about. Doesn't really have the impact that I really wanted it to. So I ended up just falling into a role. My friend was working as a support coordinator in the NDIS space, and the NDIS had only just started. So she was like, I think you're going to be really good at this. Like, why don't you come and give it a go until you figure out what you want to do? And I thought it would just be a temporary job until I find another job in nutrition and dietetics, and I find, a different role. And instead I loved it. I didn't think that I would, but I just loved how fast paced it was. And it's very much constant problem solving. And it was really wonderful. The company they worked for was excellent, and became really passionate about disability advocacy. I was working a lot in the complex mental illness space, and that was fascinating. So I ended up doing my master's in mental health because I just really I think I've always been a learner and love trying to understand things. And I was kind of done lots of different roles in the NDIS space. I worked as a dietitian in the NDIS space. I also worked as a support coordinator. I've run 2 companies in the NDIS space as well. So I just became like really passionate about like people with disability and really advocating for better support and like better supports for people with disability. It was the first time, I'd never considered myself as someone with disability. I do have cerebral palsy, but it's not something that really impacted my life. And I think when I was more involved in this space, I really thought, oh my gosh, there is so much work to do here. And there's so much advocacy that needs to happen in this space. And I became really passionate about supporting people, really passionate about human rights and helping people meet their needs and looking through a human rights lens. So yeah, just kind of found my way in there. Very, very not intentional at all.
Certainly your experiences in the NDIS running some companies got you thinking about how to run a business. ByStorm Beauty also used a bit of one of the Newcastle accelerator programs from I2N. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started to move from concept of an idea, you motivated to develop a product, thought about a product, started to do some of its design, and then you went over to I2N. Storm, over to you. Tell us about it.
I, was created these products, right, just trying to solve a problem. And I didn't really think much of it. I didn't think, I'm going to, create a business here and all of that. I was just trying to solve a problem. And at first I thought, I just want to help people. I want to give these products away. How do I make access for more people? Along this journey, the more I was talking to people, the more I realized that if we only ever think of disability through the lens of charity, we constantly reinforce the power dynamic that exists. Of that disabled people need help and we are the heroes, and we never then have an equal power balance and we never get equal human rights because we're constantly helping, supporting, looking down on people. And what I kind of learned through this experience is that in order for people with disability to have access to the products and the services that they need, we actually need to look at it through a business lens. 1 in 5 people have a disability, 20% of the population. It is a huge target market that, disability intersects every other minority group. It is the biggest minority group, but why don't we have products and services for people with disability that's not positioned as charity? You know, they are humans with money to spend that want to buy products to meet their needs, just like everything else. You know, me going from, hey, I want this, I know this doesn't need to be a charity, but I want this to be positioned as a business, but not having the experience in product-based business. So I'd run service-based business before. Product-based business, a whole nother ball game. And I didn't necessarily know how to validate the problem. I didn't necessarily understand product market fit enough. All I had was prototypes that I had made myself that I knew solved a problem, but I didn't know if there was necessarily a business case for this. I knew that on a advocacy level there should be, but is this the right product? So I, by chance, actually through my industrial designer, met someone who had gone through the I2N accelerator. I really knew nothing about it, but she said to me, hey, we're doing an info night on the accelerator. I really think you should come and see what it's about. And I thought, okay, sure, why not? Learn about the I2N accelerator, and then I just applied for it. And I thought, what have I got to lose? You know, I'm not really sure where I'm going with this. Kind of have all these products, don't really know what to do with it. The accelerator application was an interview to start with. And then you had, I call it a 2-day knockout round, but it was 2 days of them essentially testing us to see if we can get into this program, testing to see if our ideas are good enough. And it was such an incredible experience. I got through that first initial round and then got into the accelerator, which was absolutely tough. It was really tough, it really pushed you, it really challenged your ideas, and it was exactly what I needed because it really helped me to understand if I had product market fit, how to actually make this a business model. They really challenged me in every single way possible, and that's kind of what it was designed to do, almost like stress test the ideas and help you really learn about business, because I didn't really understand it from that perspective. My parents hadn't been to university, they're on Centrelink. I hadn't had any exposure to the startup world. I didn't even know what that world was. I really didn't have any kind of business experience at all. And they really helped me understand, well, one, learn all the jargon, but two, help me understand if it is going to be like a viable business model, if I should actually do the investment here, how to raise capital, all of those things, how to make a pitch deck, how to actually talk about my ideas and communicate them. And it was just such a wonderful program. I still have really good relationships with all of them. It was wonderful.
You've graduated from the accelerator. You learnt, obviously there must have been some good things happen which have allowed you to obviously to keep pursuing the business. So tell us about how you've been growing the business or creating the company.
Yeah, so we've been in market for just less than 6 months now, so still very new. But look, we've been doing pretty well. Got my first products manufactured, and we've sold just over 2,000 products in the first 6 months. We create what I call makeup accessories. So they're products that attach to makeup items to make them easier to use. So they make them easier to open, hold, and control. Because if you think of any kind of makeup, I'm sure you've applied much this morning, in order to hold makeup, you really need to be able to hold it like this, like your fingers in a pinching position. But if you can't hold your makeup in a pinching position, that may be because of arthritis. It may be because of limited dexterity, weakness, tremors. It makes applying your makeup really, really hard. Now, I first thought I was going to be creating accessible makeup. That was the first thing that I thought because it was what I needed. What I realized after doing lots of co-design sessions and doing the research with people with disability was that they don't want special makeup for special people. They want to be able to use the same products as everyone else. So I created an attachment for products that universally attaches so they can use them on whatever makeup products they want. And essentially they give them more surface area and put their hands in different positions. So we've got two shapes. One is more of a ball shape, and that essentially allows people who may not be able to hold things that are really small. It gives them more surface area to hold on to. And then we've got one in a paddle shape, and that is better for people who may not be able to curl their fingers very well, but can slide it in between their fingers, and it just gives them more surface area. And when you have more surface area, it allows you to have better control over your products. And for a lot of my community, that means maybe doing their makeup independently for the first time, not needing to ask like their mum, brother, sister to open their products or do their products for them, not relying on a support worker. It gives them back that independence in their day, which is really cool. And yeah, since then we've sold 2,000 products. We've done a collaboration with Bowie Beauty, which is Celeste Barber's brand, which was really, really cool to get a celebrity on board. And now I've just got into an incubation program with L'Oreal Group. And hopefully at the end of that, that will mean a collaboration with one of their big beauty brands as well.
When Storm first started her innovation journey, research on accessible beauty products was almost non-existent. Now, with ByStorm Beauty finding a strong and growing audience, she hopes to see accessibility become the gold standard, not the exception, across every product on the shelf.
Through this journey, what I realized is that, I designed all of my products myself. And that's an important thing because when I went to research how to make accessible products, it doesn't exist. That information is not available. How a product designer is going to make products more accessible if we actually don't even have any information on how to make them more accessible? One of my big dreams and goals is to make accessibility the standard in product development. And in order to do that, we need to know, how to make things accessible. And that's really what I want to work on. The big dream is to have a almost like a Heart Foundation tick of approval, but for accessibility of beauty products. So we can then create a feedback loop with brands so they can actually know, hey, is my product accessible? How do I make it more accessible by having a certification system? And for people with disability or people who struggle with fine motor control, they can then go through a certification system to actually find products that are going to meet their needs. Because one of the most difficult things is, how do you know if a product's going to be easy or difficult to use? By looking at it. A lot of the time we don't publish accessibility information about beauty products. There's lots and lots of areas that are really underdeveloped in the beauty space when it comes to accessibility. And that's really what I want to work on, is the whole ecosystem around it.
Well, that's a big vision. That's a big vision. Now, I'm going to change gears a little bit, Storm, and I know you're an avid user of AI. I want to ask you, maybe you can tell our listeners why you're so enthusiastic about AI.
Look, I am a really big avid user of AI. One of the other businesses I run is I do run an AI consulting agency. So I do help businesses streamline their processes and operations and efficiencies with AI, primarily in the NDIS space, that have also made my way into the retail and beauty market space, as well as one of my many jobs. But look, for me, AI has been really transformative from my life for an accessibility perspective. I really struggled typing, as an example. I can only type with one hand, but being able to voice communicate to my computer now has made me 1,000 times more efficient. I've always really loved problem solving. So being able to problem solve and streamline and improve things with AI has just been transformative personally for me, but also working particularly in service-based businesses and now product-based businesses, seeing how so much admin weighs down. It weighs down in cost, weighs down in people's job satisfaction as well. I love being able to go into a business, look at all the things that people don't like doing and going, how can we improve this with AI? How can we streamline this? And really build out systems and processes so the humans in the job can do the things that they're actually hired for, which is, the thing that they're passionate about. And all those little admin tasks we can offload to AI and make people's jobs more enjoyable and, reduce costs.
If you were going to give some advice to our students studying at University of Newcastle today, what would you tell them in terms of what things that they should be looking to establish the foundations for a successful career? Any advice?
Oh, I would say that while you're at uni, take as many risks as possible. You think that a lot of the time that everything's really weighted and what happens if I fail? Try to fail as quickly as possible. Do so many things and really if if you can do industry placements, if you can go intern, if you had the privilege to be able to do that, because it is a privilege, take as many opportunities as you can and really try to figure out what you like and what you don't like. Just because you said that you wanted to do one thing for your career doesn't mean that you have to stay in it. You can change degrees, you can change industries, you can do whatever you want. But I think try lots of things, fail quickly, figure out what you want to do. Uni is the best time to be taking risks. You think that there's all these consequences. There really isn't. Just take as many risks as you can and try to figure out what you want to do, I think.
That's a great answer. I think we had one of our other people on our podcast, Tarun Gupta, said to us something similar to what you said. He said, just say yes more often to opportunities. And I think it's a kind of exactly the same advice. You've sort of said, take a chance, take a risk. He just said, sometimes people will say to him, why don't you do this job? And he used to think, I don't really want to do that job, but he'd say yes, and it helped him build a great career. So I think it's very similar advice coming from two slightly different angles, but I think it's a good opportunity to advise the students to take chances. But of course, I think it's important, if Mrs. Me now, the Vice-Chancellor, talk, you've got to finish something. Because I think that sometimes people start something and they jump around, but I think the key is to finish something, because then it gives you that foundation to build off. But I think what you're saying is try different things, different electives. Go to Nepal, go to Tamworth, go to Armidale, or work in part-time jobs, etc., which you've done. Work in an industry, switch jobs, and then find something which is you're passionate about, like what you've done. Storm, it's fantastic, yeah.
Try to meet as many people as possible. I think that was the thing. I was very insulated at uni because I was, just trying to work and trying to survive. But as I look back, I think try to meet as many people as possible. Like networking and meeting people is so important. And through those conversations with people that you'd never necessarily intended to meet, it's just by happenstance. You sometimes have conversations that change the trajectory of what you're doing. They might open a door to a placement opportunity, to a job, to a career that you never thought that you would be in, to a passion or an interest. I think being around people who challenge you is really important. And just getting out of your comfort zone, I think, is really, really important. Just meeting as many people as possible.
That's great advice, Storm. In fact, I say things to students, try to form friends, big new friends, talk to people, join a club, join a society. It's not just about what happens in the classroom, and it's just a great way to network, as you say, open doors and open your thinking. So it's wonderful to speak with you today, Storm, and it's been a pleasure to have an alumnus of the University of Newcastle doing so well and with such an interesting story to share with our listeners. So I wish you luck with your business, and I think it's going to be a great success, and I'm really looking forward to reading and listening and hearing about your successes as you go forward. So all the best to you, Storm, and thanks again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
This was Leading Conversations with University of Newcastle Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky, talking with founder of ByStorm Beauty and proud graduate of the University of Newcastle, Storm Menzies. This podcast was recorded on Awabakal land at the University of Newcastle's Callaghan campus. To hear more stories from inspiring leaders, be sure to tune in to the next episode featuring Taras Kravchuk, CEO of Tarform. Until then, this was Leading Conversations with University of Newcastle Vice-Chancellor Alex Zelinsky.